online tracking, but what I really meant was optimization of visual content for social media and SEO purposes. So whether it's an infographic or visual content marketing or anything like that, we'll do a class or a presentation just about how to optimize that data, whether it's how to form the JPEG file or set up the landing page or do online tracking and be able to look at, was your infographic successful? If you put in a data visualization online, how do you tell how many people shared it or how many people have linked to it or posted it, that kind of thing. So that's the plan for July. We do meet monthly, I didn't mention that earlier, so the idea is to find ideally a local speaker or a local topic every month. And so far we've been able to do that. But it's free, like this is free to all of you, so we don't have funds to pay to fly somebody in until we get a good sponsor that's willing to pay for flight costs for a couple speakers. But I open it up. Anybody else know of any upcoming events you want to share with the group? Anybody?
Hello, so along with a collaborator, I've just started a D3 meetup group here in Dallas. So we'll meet again at the end of July. Okay. And I'll post a link to that group in the comments. So join us if you're curious about D3 and want to practice more.
Excellent. Anybody? Other events? Coming up, Summer Slow. If you're not familiar with the Big Design Dallas conference, is coming up in September. Their early bird pricing ends June 30th. But we have an additional 20% discount code. So if you have any interest or thought, it's a really good conference. For September, you can use our code and get a ticket early. So tonight, our experiment is a DataViz demo night, where we've got 6 or 7 different visualization tools. We've got different people who are going to show each tool. I didn't get bios from anybody, so I can introduce you, but you're really going to have to introduce, who you are and what your exposure to the tool is. Is this just a tool you enjoy or are playing with, or is it something you actually use for work? That kind of thing. So I want to start tonight. Micah, why don't you start with D3?
Yeah, fantastic.
And we'll jump into that. We need the dongle.
Thank you, sir.
Stand, sit, whatever you do.
Excellent. Yeah, I will stand. So hello, everyone. I'm Micah. I build custom data visualizations with Intented in Houston, and enjoy coming to your fair city.
Love it, Dallas. A little less humid here.
Less underwater. So forgive me while I size this browser window. So today I'd like to show you D3 as data-driven documents. It is a tool, it's a JavaScript library to let you build interactive graphics on the web. It came out of some academic research. There's a long history of this research with other tools. This particular tool was developed by these people, Mike Bostock, Vadim, Jeff Hare at Stanford. They published the paper in 2011 and released the library around that time. At the bottom of this link, which is in some links that I will share, you can actually read the whole paper. I really recommend it. Inside of these academic information visualization papers is lots of really useful information, useful concepts. So I'll walk through some examples. So with D3, you can build a histogram. It's a common practice to share both the chart and the code to create it, and the data. In this case, I think we're generating the data in the code. You can also create a stacked bar chart. So if you have categorical data, don't fear, you can show it. D3 is wonderful because you can show animations and transitions. So after a delay, we sort the bar chart by the frequency, the y-axis value.
Did you code that, or is that because the user clicks the checkbox up there?
So in this case, I think it's a delay. And like we can go look in the code, but I think it is a certain number of milliseconds, then fire the transition. D3 wraps JavaScript's mouse events with the on method. So you can certainly do that second thing you described. You can also create line charts. So this is one that I made that shows oil and gas production. There's a log scale, and there's a small amount of interactivity. So say we want to look at only gas. If I click the other products, they fade, and you see only gas. And so I will reload this. This is a scatter plot. Again, you see some nice transitions. Threatened, endangered species on the Y, and then only the mammals on the X. You get this general idea of the distribution and these countries that the data comes from. If you want to instead look at continents, when I click this text, the color comes in along with this legend. So you can transition, animate attributes like color, but also whole chart elements like that legend. And I'll take it away. And it fades away. Do you have hierarchical data? No, never seen that before. So D3 has many nice charts for dealing with hierarchical data. So this is fancifully called a zoomable icicle, where you can quickly zoom in on a certain subset and then travel back to the top. If you have ever heard of D3, it's probably because of the choropleth maps, the filled maps. So here we're looking at unemployment data in the United States by county. These are my favorite. You can also make more unique maps. D3 has some rich cartography functions. So here we have a projection that shows us what it might look like if we were on board a satellite looking at the East Coast. And I will say again, code.
And is this via the D3 website or this stuff, or is this?
Right. So many of these are by the creator of D3. Some of it's my work, some other people. I will share a link with a list of all these links, so you can find them and explore at your leisure. So you can add maps and these transitions to these animations to build explanatory tools or educational tools. So maybe this is something where you can lean back and get some intuition about the places in the world, the locations of these countries. You can also look at ocean currents. So this data is about a day old. I think it's beautiful. We can also rotate the boat.
Yeah, and you gotta watch it for a second. It actually is animated, it's not static.
That's correct. So you see these flows, these ocean currents. I encourage you to explore this on your own. We can look at wind and change a lot of other wonderful parameters. So here's a look at wind. Something's happening in the North Atlantic.
A non-tropical expression.
So I mentioned hierarchical data before. The city of Houston publishes the entire employee list for the city. So that has IDs and the IDs of the manager the employee works for. So we're looking at the Parks and Recreation Department. And you can see John Davidson has people who work for him, and he in turn works for this person. This is a prototype, so the labels could be nicer. D3 takes two columns, the employee ID and the manager ID that's associated with that employee. So it's a linked list, or just a list of edges, and runs this physics simulation to lay out all of the individual nodes based on their relationships with other nodes, the number of common occurrences inside that list.
This is one of yours?
This one is one of mine. There was a hackathon a few weeks ago. And I want you to be impressed, but I should really be honest with you. This is adapted from an example.
Right. Use the code that was on the page.
Right.
Yep.
So my code is 20 or 30 lines, changing variable names, colors, the charge, some of these physics simulation parameters. We did this in 2.5 hours. So D3 is also useful for visualizing complex concepts. So here you have a maze, and we're going to see the maze animated into a tree that shows all of the possible paths through the maze. The spanning tree is generated by something called Wilson's algorithm. And as we watch, you'll see that there are some dead ends, some paths that do not take you out, but there is one path that takes you to the end of the maze. I encourage you to visit this and refresh it. It's randomly generated, it will be different next time. In D3, you can also do journalism. You can tell stories. And so hopefully I have time to quickly show you this project from Nadia Brimmer on urbanization in East Asia. And I visited it before, and so I'm going to step back to the beginning here. So you have some text setting the stage. There's data from 2000 and 2010, the World Bank. And it'll show you these cities. Some aggregates from the two time periods. And behind the scenes, there are timers that run and say, okay, transition this element, show a new element. So you have this animated, dynamic experience, but it's on Rails, it's guided. I'll step to the next one. So while it's on Rails and you're directing the user through a linear narrative, there's also exploration you can do. So I can see only Indonesia or China. I can say, well, urban land is more important to me than population. So let's look at Japan. They have a lot of urban land. When I look at Japan, I see this table, which tells me useful information I can compare just for that. So I would encourage you to play with this project, watch it all the way through. That's a parallel coordinates plot, something that I think Tableau can do as well, but is a bit unique. And again, we can filter. We have some overplotting here. So even the people who are very good sometimes find challenges. And then I'll show you another look at a scatter plot where you have discrete points instead of, well, and I say it's a scatter meets a bar. Discrete points stacked. Perhaps that's what you should call it. So I encourage you to continue. Explore this. It's one of my favorites. It's fairly recent.
Did that one show the code?
So that's an excellent question.
Because that's really complex. You know, you go to show like how much code it takes to step through a story like that.
I will share a link. The answer is that it's a WordPress blog that has some obfuscated JavaScript that contains the D3. It's obfuscated so it loads quickly. Nadia Brimmer, the author, actually has a GitHub repo that's public that has all the code. So it took me a half hour of looking to find it. I'll share that. So hopefully these examples have motivated you to want to know more, want to learn. My friend Current has this wonderful video and presentation that takes you from some very basics to some beautiful complex charts. So I encourage you to walk through here. It's an excellent introduction. My friend Scott Murray, who's a professor at the University of San Francisco, has written a book, Interactive Data Visualization for the Web. Some combination of his friendly publishers at O'Reilly and his charisma and charm made it possible to make this free online. So you can read the whole thing with interactive examples. It is worth your time. I've read it twice. Dashing D3.js is also an excellent tutorial, a bit shorter, and I'll leave you with a meme. Thanks so much. I'm Micah. I will be around afterwards, happy to answer questions, and happy to see what Troy has to show us.
Any burning questions for Micah?
Yeah,
go ahead.
Just one, Micah. I'm curious, when you're doing personal D3 development,
Of course.
are you staying at the, I don't know much about your background, are you staying at D3 level, or are you using abstracted libraries on top of D3?
It's an excellent question. So I work with D3 directly, because what I do often is very custom. There are excellent libraries, and some of them are DCJS and VD3. HighCharts is something you pay for based on D3. There are many others. And I'll share some links. Generally, if you want something quick on your website that's open source, you might use a high-level library.
But you're coming at it from an HTML, CSS JavaScript.
That's right.
Yeah, okay, gotcha.
And one of the beautiful things about D3, as opposed to Flash or action scripts and technologies that came before, is you don't need an applet or a download. Just link to the library, which itself is vanilla JavaScript, and it works. Any modern browser. Other questions? Sure. One more.
So, how about feeding large amounts of data? Like, how good is it with kind of huge data?
The DOM gets very unhappy with you at about 10,000 elements. So each SVG point line is an element with this infrastructure associated with it, all of these attributes, all of these properties it inherits from classes in JavaScript. So 10,000 elements is some kind of limit. There's also this like human perceptual limit. So what can a person distinguish from what you're presenting? So usually like people who are really talented will use filtering and aggregation, some statistics maybe, to represent these really large sets in accessible ways. If you must show more points than that, and sometimes you can. So if you like a normal screen size is about 800,000 pixels, if you some reason wanted to map a data point to every single pixel, you want to read about the canvas, part of HTML5, or WebGL.
How easy is it to plug it to a database directly? Like, I have some Hyperion IR background. So
what you want to do is present D3 with comma delimited text, CSV, or JSON. You can also do TSV or XML. But CSV and JSON are the most common. Most common.
Yeah.
So how do you do that? You have some kind of web app or some kind of code on your server that executes a query and converts the results to one of these formats. And then presents an API that your D3 or your JavaScript code really can call and get a JSON file or a JavaScript object. It's an excellent question.
So where will you be posting all these links?
In the comments on the meetup.
Yeah, on the meetup, on the event.
For this event.
Thank you.
And I'll do it right now. Let's see, I used the perfect one. Really good one. Oh, it's just mine. Can I have one?
Thank you. Hopefully it just works. It's cutting off the very left side of your window. Perfect. Good. Okay. Hey, my name is Troy Oxford. I work at the Dallas Morning News. I do graphics online and in print. I'm going to show you something called Chartwork that we've been working on. It's sort of an in-house tool. Worked on it with my coworker. His name is John McClure. We've created this because, well, the problem is newspapers, like, over time have been shedding employees and getting smaller and smaller. So our art staff, which in 2005 had 16 people, now has about 4, and the demand for graphics hasn't gone down. And we get a lot of requests for really small, simple charts, and because we're putting these online, like a lot of reporters come in early in the morning and will ask for a chart that they can put with a blog item or something they're putting online. And our graphic staff may not get in until later that afternoon. Traditionally, when the artist gets in, they'll build a chart,
it goes to the copy desk, they look at it, and all. So by the time that whole process is done and it's uploaded online, it may be, 5, 6, 7 o'clock. So it's not really ideal. So we created this to let reporters create their own charts, their basic charts, and then publish them online. Let me show you some examples. And the nice thing about it, we're focusing a lot on mobile. A lot of our graphics work fine on desktop versions, but we need to make sure they work on mobile too. So we've sort of give them a little preview about or how it looks on mobile. Some of these just don't work on mobile. Oh, and when I show you this, there are some things that we're still working on. It's not perfect, but so basically how it works. Let me just walk through how a reporter would use it. So here's my data here. I'm going to come over here. I want to start a chart. And these are the templates we have, the different types of charts we can do. And we're adding more. But I think for this, we'll just stick with a basic bar chart. Because some of the reporters may not know what's the best type of chart to use for the data that they have. We sort of give a little background of like why you would use this chart over like a line chart or something like that. So it gives them a little background. Let's go to make this chart. Paste your data in here.
You had to specify paste clean data.
Yeah. and that's another thing too. It sort of forces them to make sure everything is correct, because a lot of times when things are given to us, there'll be errors and things not formatted correctly. And it would be my luck that this isn't updated. Let's try it again. There we go. So, shows you what it looks like. It's slightly interactive, gives you the values there. And it's another important thing too is it's already styled. Before they would build a chart in Excel and just take a screenshot and then just post that static image with their story. But now it has style. You can add your headline in here, and you get like a live preview. Add your intro copy, footnote where the data came from, artist credit, and it adds all of this on here. And whenever you're happy with it, you may want to tweak it. We've put limited colors in there because we don't want like a whole rainbow. Yeah, or clown vomit, as I like to.
So you pre-programmed the style guide.
Yeah, and we
when we use colors.
Yeah, we try and keep it consistent with our print palette too. So there I have the chart the way I like it, or maybe I've discovered one of these numbers is updated. So we can change the values there. And that's looking okay. So then what they do is they come over to this Publish tab, click on it, save to chart work, you call it, give it a title, and publish.
So it saves under as you as a user.
And I can access this at any time. But after you do that, what it does is it generates this embed code, responsive So it'll show up fine for desktop and mobile. Or if you just wanted one version, you can copy these. So they just copy that bit of code and then just paste it. But the nice thing about it too is for the print product, we can just come down here and click this little SVG button, and it saves it. It's a little render glitch, but it saves a vector version that we can open up in Adobe Illustrator and style it for the print product. So it saves a lot of production time doing that. We've got some other tabs here that are more expert level stuff. So if we wanted to tweak, some of the text or how things render, developers can come in here and have that level of control. But here's some of the, just a basic line chart. Let's see this. Horizontal bar chart. And it's really handy for these quick maps, because conventionally what we would do is they would give us the data and we would take it into ArcView GIS and build it this way, but now it's much faster doing it like this.
So does it use as your platform, or does it?
I'm sorry?
Does it use Azure, or are you using?
No, I'm sorry. I guess I should have said segue from. This is all sort of built on D3. John McClure's is the one who put this together. He used Django, but there's a lot of JavaScript libraries and custom JavaScript that he's put this together.
Comment?
I'm sorry?
You can convert shapefiles to GeoJSON, which is what you see here. There are other tools. Yeah.
And it's using what for the mapping underlying?
Probably GeoJSON or TopoJSON.
Yeah, it's GeoJSON.
Which is a format for geographic data.
And these are just standard they're just sort of preset shapes like the US map, Texas counties map. That's cool.
Did you get any initial resistance from the reporters when they found out they had to do more of this?
No, because I think a lot of people wanted that control, especially if it meant that they would have it. They didn't want to wait. Yeah. I mean, there'll still be reporters who would prefer us to do it just because they don't want to mess with it. They just want to work on the copy. But yeah, we had one reporter who had a lot of fun. Who just went through building all these.
Came out over the dark one in South Texas, Middle Texas. Is that like northeast?
Fort Bend.
What is that?
And I want to say Rock
Headquarters.
No, they're in Corpus.
He's on Church Darkins now.
Yeah.
Texarkana. They must love this.
That's what we
It
should
is. This is why we.
on my login. It'll save all my charts. So if I need to come back and
Low population. We got
let's see. And these are all the charts that other reporters have done. It shows you what type of chart, but they'll call on us if something isn't rendering correctly.
Support request.
Yeah, you'll get to that.
Use a ticketing system for that? Remedy or?
But yeah, it's like I said, it's not perfect. There's still. Let's see if I can find that.
What's that
Yeah, like
last
the-
tab? Is
I'm
it
sorry?
telephone? What's the last tab?
Call.
Oh,
Yeah,
gotcha.
Call Troy.
It's a help desk for
Gotcha.
two. So. But yeah, we have a problem with let's say we had a feeder line chart that had like 30 years worth of data. trying to figure out how to break it into decades, and then still like keep months or things like that, or probably especially for mobile.
Timescales.
Yeah. But I'll show you later what I'm talking about. But yeah, because we're considering mobile, that's sometimes a problem. But yeah, we're still working on it, but it's you know, with limited resources, it just makes it easier to produce some of these charts.
So forgive me if you said this. How does the journalist decide where in the text the chart is put, the layout?
Like where in their article?
Right.
Yeah, I guess, I mean...
All right, so it's a design question, but in the tool, how do you do it? And again, sorry if you showed us and I missed it.
Oh, no.
Just an illustration.
Or maybe
Yeah.
it's responsive.
Mm-hmm. So
Okay.
they would just copy this code here,
Got it.
and then just paste it where it's relevant in their copy.
In line wherever they want.
Mhm.
Okay.
So your example copy here, that is, you're just doing the graphic, not the.
Oh, yeah,
Not the text.
That's just to give you a preview. Yeah, he was originally going to use like a lorem ipsum. It was the
Right.
Samuel Jackson. Samuel Jackson ipsum, which had a lot of F-bombs in it. I discouraged him from doing that. But yeah, trying to think, he's put some Easter eggs in here too. Let me see. I know this is. Oh, no, here it is. So has anyone heard of craft work?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's sort of where we were trying to come up with a name for this, and someone mentioned chart work with an O. That's why it's spelled with an E, because it's one of those brainstorming things that got way out of control.
Hey, why not?
So, and that became like the theme. You know, we based it off one of the album covers, and if you click that little, let's see if this works.
Yes, it does. This is fantastic.
That's great.
I swear there's something else in here. Okay, well, I don't know where he did it, but there's like a little music video that pops up, so yeah, something we have fun with. But yeah, any more questions? Or?
So chart work is not open.
Oh yeah, so I wanted to mention that too. Like we're both very much you know, about the open source philosophy. So this, I believe this is on GitHub.
Oh, exciting.
Yeah. So he's hoping people will get there and tinker with it. Yeah, that was one thing. One of the editors asked, like, can we sell this to other newspapers? He said, nope.
Yeah, so you have an instance for your newsroom, but the code is on GitHub if we wanted to run it.
Yeah, if
Awesome.
you know, because each publication style may be a little different. So.
Certainly. Do you know the name of the developer? If it's his GitHub profile?
Of his profile? Let me get back.
Follow up. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
nice.
yeah.
This is awesome.
So, okay.
Troy, you want to show sort of separate, I mean, there's some more intense visualizations that the team at Dallas Morning News does. You guys have a page that sort of hosts all your bigger interactive ones?
No.
I forgot what it's called.
Well, there's a thing called viewport, but that's more static. Here.
Yeah, I guess that was it.
Yeah, these are mostly static.
So the team there, and I'm sure you do as well, when you go beyond what chart work does, you do some more creative, intense
Oh, yeah.
stuff. It's just, so this kind of stuff you can't template. You can't set it up for any report. You
No.
know.
I'm guessing the giggles are about this one. Yeah, that
Wasn't
was-
expecting it. It was all
Three strikes, man.
I don't know what you see, huh?
Like from Minecraft.
I know you guys are doing a lot of good work.
So how big did you say your staff?
We have 4 people. Trying to think if one of these is interactive.
You guys open source or share the code for the custom ones? For any of the ones that are beyond what Chartwork does?
Yeah, well, we tend to do like a lot of just development in GitHub, so I don't know that we necessarily promote it, but it's all on there. Dallas News is part of the account.
There's a question for both you guys from a D3 standpoint. Once you publish one, how easy is it then for other people to share a visualization that's interactive and it's code? Do they have to use embed code? You guys ever play with loading a JPEG so that when people share it, the JPEG gets shared with your interactive stays in your host site and that kind of stuff?
Incredibly easy to share a link. Sharing a visualization with a certain state
With a visual or a look?
is more involved.
Say that again?
So you can share a link, obviously, but I think what Randy's asking is, say I visit, I make some filters, some selections, and get a certain view I like.
Yep.
It's possible, but it's more involved. You'd want to save the user selections in some configuration object, and then maybe make a unique URL.
And even that's even more complicated than I was thinking of. Because I know we've done a couple times where we'll set up a state, take a snapshot of it, and then build in that image in, for example, the Twitter default code. Right, so there's a static state that will get shared by default if you tweet, the page that has the D3 visualization, because you can't share the visual.
Yeah, that's
because it's all code. Yeah,
that's something we're working on now. In fact, yeah, because when you tweet that link, you don't have it in the link.
Right.
Yeah.
There's a tool called Phantom.js, which is a headless browser you can run on the server that will render pages and create images for you, PNGs, I think.
So on the fly. Yeah.
Yeah, this has sort of been it doesn't give you the whole.
Right, so you can download.
You have that technology. That's great.
Right.
So yeah,
So this is where the journalist can do it, but somebody reading the news article, they don't get those buttons, do they? Like in a published version?
Another thing you can do is use SVG Crowbar, which I think is from the people at the New York Times.
Yeah, that's what this SVG download is.
It's based on?
Yeah.
And that will get the page as it is when you press the button. Which is a nice static image, although you couldn't interact from there. You would.
Exactly.
So it's a good hard problem.
Okay, yeah, and D3, I know in newspapers, is pretty much become the standard for data visualizations.
Okay, any other questions? D3 related, anybody? Bruce, you want to set up? Is it our refreshment bar now? Intermission.
Yeah, go right ahead.
You want which one?
So that can work.
That was really cool. Thank you. I really appreciate it. Is that allowed?
That is not allowed.
Yes.
There's no Dr. Pepper in there.
we had one of my coworkers, he had like an online. Yeah, he can operate again. Yeah, I love that.
Sign-ups are open for the next round sometime in June, sometime soon. And he's going to do it every week for us.
Oh, that'd be good.
Yeah, like October.
Well, it didn't, like, it started off like almost like way too slow for me. And then, like, towards the midway with the director stuff, it's like,
No, actually,
he had like a 17-minute video. It's like, oh, you could do this. That's where I kind of, where I sort of dropped off.
Oh, really? I will invite you with this email address.
Okay.
We're reading
That's the thing about
personal when you're working on a case, when you're working on a project, you need to have an answer right away.
There was for people that work, sir, like people from the FT and
This professor from Austria. Thank you so much. I'll let you back in. I have John's cookie
What's cool?
like one step.
Cool.
That's awesome.
really opinion.
You're a project manager now?
Well, no, I just
I'm Dick.
Yeah, that's kind of.
Cookie Monster.
He's that took us to lunch with us.
I'm always interested in visualization,
That's nice to meet
Okay.
Everybody meet Bruce.
I'm Bruce Moore. I come from data warehousing and optimization modeling background with a lot of finance thrown into the whole mix. Right now I am starting my own software development and consulting business to do interest rate optimization software for community banks. What I'm here to talk about today is R. One of the things about R that's probably important to understand is that it came from a statistics background. It's not directly a visualization tool. If you want to write a dissertation in statistics, everything that you could ever possibly need is there. Because fundamentally, every dissertation, PhD dissertation in statistics, starting in probably about 2002 or 2003, has probably been done using R. It wasn't used as a general purpose tool until a few years ago when the Wall Street Journal figured out that it worked really well for creating publication quality graphics and started using it. And then the general population of graphics designers started looking at R for data visualizations. So I'm not going to talk about necessarily all of the super whiz-bang things that you can do with it. I'm going to talk about it from the standpoint of productivity in doing, for the most part, relatively pedestrian kinds of graphics and things that are accessible to general users. I'm not going to get into some of the really cool visualizations that it will do that you would only understand if you were in bioinformatics. or some of the very specialized kinds of things. I guess before I start, I'd like to get some idea how many people here program in any language. Okay, so about half of the people here have programmed in any language. How many have done graphics in, say, Excel or one of the GUI-oriented tools? Okay. One thing to recognize is that it is aimed at programming community. There are some tools that will help you to do some graphics if you're not a programmer, but it really is oriented toward people who are doing programming. I've got really 4 major things that I want to show you today. The first is really sort of the productivity tools that people in academia and academic publishing use to generate some of their documents, some of which I think might be of use to a more general population. The first I want to show you is a tool called RStudio, where I've got all of my code over here on the left. Now, one of the things you'll notice if you go in and look at some of this a little bit more carefully, some of what I've got here looks like a text formatting language called LaTeX. You've probably never heard of it. There's another tab that I've got open that is, golly gee, that's HTML. What I've done is I've got a set of code to generate some graphs, but I also need to generate the text around those graphs with all the numbers from my computations. And every time I change one of my input variables, I don't want to have to go back into my text and change 4.2 to 4.7 so that everything crossfits correctly. So one of the capabilities in R is that you can embed the code into LaTeX, HTML, or RTF. The RTF component is something that you can use if you're in Microsoft Word and other kind of more mainstream word processors. That interface was actually written by a pharmaceutical company. Because what they needed to do, they needed to generate an inexpensive way to generate all of their drug study reports for the FDA, and they had to get all the numbers so that they cross-footed and were correct. So they ended up creating the S-weave interface so that they could interweave our code to generate graphics and calculations and all of their text for their reports. So I'm going to show you a couple of the outputs from this. The first is just a web article where I've generated about 30 different graphics, and I've included all of the text or all of the numbers for my calculations straight into the HTML, so that I don't have to go in and manually update all of those numbers in probably 300 or 400 different places in this article whenever I change the input values. I use the same code embedded in some LaTeX to generate graphics for an A0 size poster. So this is a poster that's like 3 by 4 feet. I'll use it at a booth or at an academic conference. So this is an example. In essence, it's kind of mail merge with all sorts of calculations put into it. And that's probably a mail merge for data. So that's the first interface that I want to show you. The second one is really kind of a little bit more pedestrian. I'm going to pull in a bunch of data from the Federal Reserve and display a bunch of interest rates. One of the nice things about R, and one of the things that I think has caused it to start being used in some newspapers and other organizations, is the fact that you can have multiple themes and change the look and feel very, very easily. So this is my basic chart. So I'm going to run that. That's just a real simple chart done in ggplot, which is today probably the most common interface that people use for R graphics. There are about 4 or 5 different graphics engines in R that have, which one you use most kind of depends upon when you started using it. ggplot is probably the most common one today, although for some things it's not necessarily the most powerful. Now, just by changing a couple of lines of code, I can change it to the Wall Street Journal style guide. So if you have to use the same graphic and output it in multiple styles to use in different media, this is a very convenient way to do that, because all you have to do, and if you look at the code for this, all I've done is change this theme that I'm using here. Now, if you have to do something, and here's an example of a publicly available style for The Economist, another publication. If you have other graphics tools that you use in your organization and you have to make your graphs look like them, there's a thing that makes it look like Tableau. And finally, if someone in one of the executives in your organization thinks that Excel generates the prettiest graphics in the world, you can actually make it look like Excel. So this is, from the standpoint of productivity for producing a lot of different graphics for the same chart for different media, the themes in ggplot are some of a really nice productivity tool. Okay, so now I'm going to go over to let's see. Okay, this is the next thing that I want to show you is something called RGL. This is an interface, and I think I have locked this puppy up. This is an interface that allows you to do interactive graphics. If my machine were not locked up right now, I would be able to rotate this in this web browser in 3 dimensions. That's what RGL is aimed for. It's really aimed at web implementations, and when you're done with your graphic and you like it, you can call one function and it will generate a simple HTML file and a JavaScript file that you can then upload to the website of your choice and have that same interactive graphic available on your website. It's not good for publication. The rendering is such that you really can't get the kind of resolution and the line quality and the sharpness that you would like for a publication graphic. You also can't programmatically tell it what viewpoint you want to use. You have to manipulate it around to the viewpoint that you want and then save it. So it's not something that you can do programmatically in code. I have to tell you, the main reason that I learned how to use the RGL interface is that I had to create this graphic with the dome and a plane that, actually 2 planes that intersect the dome. I was stunned at how hard it was to generate that graphic in all of the various statistics tools that I've got that are available to me. Everything will generate that 3D dome, and everything will generate that plane just fine. But RGL was actually the only tool that I could find that would generate the dome with an intersecting plane. And okay, so let's, final thing that I want to show you is something I actually did at about 2 hours at a hackathon. Awesome. I pulled down some public data from the Dallas Police Department on their arrests for a particular Friday sometime back in December.
Your name showed up?
My name did not show up.
But it would be a coincidence.
It would be a coincidence. And I just, plotted police calls. So all the different colors here are the type of police call and the location. Not, kind of interesting, but not anything that's going to be earth-shattering. And then I did a summary on that data, just a real quick statistical thing. And the thing that was interesting here is that the two most common calls were major disturbance. There were 43 cars that got called, or officers that got called out on major disturbances. And shootings, 22 officers got called out on shootings. So I decided these are clearly the most labor-intensive things that occurred during this shift, and I wanted to find out a little bit more about where these occurred and what happened. So now, next I plotted these. There's one shooting and probably, 8 or 9 different major disturbances. So those 43 disturbance calls, they were called out, like maybe one to 5 officers for each of the major disturbance calls, and 22 officers for the shooting.
Wow.
Yeah. Then for grid, one of the very, very clear things, if you reduce the number of shootings, you could save a whole lot of money.
Or other.
I mean, it's
lives. We're going to need more ammo. Lives. Money. We don't care about deaths.
And then I started to look at, okay, now, are there any particular parts of town that maybe I would really like to avoid? So I drew a contour map. And this is, just a contour map showing the level of, in this case, the level of violent crime by geography within the city. And clearly, now granted, this was for that one day, so you can't really make any long-term. That was actually the next thing I wanted to look at, but the data set for that was too large to download over a Wi-Fi connection that 50 people were sharing. So then, the next thing I did, just to pretty it up a little bit, I added some color contouring to it so that, there are a variety of different things. This is actually a fairly simple thing to do in R, and the code for this is really pretty straightforward. To generate one of these maps, I'm really only doing about 2 or 3 lines of code, and for the one where I'm generating the contour charts, that's everything to generate the contour chart with the shading on it. Because really all I've done there is I've got XYZ data. I've got the latitude, the longitude, and the frequency of occurrence. So I've got the 3-dimensional data, and then this is really all I need to generate that contour chart. That's 10 minutes on R or 14 minutes on R, I could probably spend 3 or 4 hours on each of these different interfaces, but I hope that I've given you some sense of what it does well and what it doesn't necessarily do well. Thank you.
Questions? Anybody?
So you do consulting work?
Yes.
In the financial industry, is that correct?
Yes.
So you've done economic forecasting and everything else?
I have done economic forecasting. Most of what I've done is more at an individual institution level, looking at fraud and abuse. Principally, my main application is pricing, but I've done fraud and abuse, a variety of different kinds of marketing things.
So it's predictive analytics is what you're more doing then?
Some of the things that I've done have been predictive.
Short, thank you. Haley, you want to start?
Good to see you, man.
Yeah, definitely. So Bruce, where do you think, where's the best application of saying, you know what, we need to use R for this? Versus, because it's an offline programming environment.
Yes. I would say that if you need interactive, it will do that, but that's not what there are. I mean, D3 is clearly a better tool if you're looking for the super whiz-bang stuff. If you need to generate a publication quality graphic where you're going to use the same data in multiple different styles, that is certainly one of the places.
Yeah.
That's one of the places, because you can, if you need a PNG, I mean, all the different formats, different resolutions, you can generate all of those different things very, very quickly. If you need to do visualizations that are going to be used by a professional, someone who is a subject matter expert in a particular area, that's probably where R would be more useful than most other tools, because there are libraries to generate all sorts of different subject matter specific graphics, and that's really where, because I mean, fundamentally what's happened over the last decade is that, when somebody wrote their dissertation, they needed some kind of specialized graphic, or that specialized visualization was their dissertation. And as a result, there are just some really amazing domain-specific graphics that it will generate very, very easily. And that's really the area where it shines, is in the domain-specific stuff, or the case where you have to generate a lot publication quality in a lot of different formats quickly and easily.
Did you program in any other languages?
How long do you have?
Yes. Just say yes.
Yes.
How easy was it to switch from that to this?
That's a very good question, because R it's not like any other language that I've learned. I mean, there's what I would refer to as the C++ family of languages, and I would count JavaScript, Java, most of the languages that are in common use today are syntactically very, very similar to C and C++. R is not. And it does things very efficiently if you think in terms of matrices and sets. It has some internal things that will automatically parallelize code if you work with it in a matrix or an array. You have to think in that paradigm in order to program in R efficiently.
I found that it's worth it.
It's worth the
different abstractions when you're doing stats or data cleaning is totally worth learning.
Yeah, it's it's not a trivial investment of time because it's a very different way of thinking, and it's syntactically very, very different from all of the other languages that I've worked with. But right now, it's actually probably the only language that I'm writing in commonly. Well, that and SQL, because I come from a data warehousing background where the same data was used in other tools. I've always done all of my data cleaning in a data warehouse so that every tool had access to the same data with the same calculated values, rather than doing the data cleaning in R. It has the capabilities.
With the nagging about clean data, jeez.
It has the capabilities to do data cleaning, but in some respects there are, until you get down to this statistics-specific data cleaning, there are probably better tools to do, a lot of the general purpose manipulations.
I come from the same background, so
Okay. Let's talk more.
Yeah.
All right, thanks, Bruce. Everybody meet Haley.
If this was the college lecture, I'm going way back to like high school. My background, I'm market insight manager at Interstate Batteries. I've always been on the business side of things, but I've been operating for the last, I'd say, 10 or so years in that wonderful space between IT and business. So I'm bilingual for that. Part of mine is getting my friends in marketing and on the business side to better communicate with the IT side. So when we did an MDM implementation, I would make sure, not from the VA standpoint, but actually from the business standpoint, that the matching and the cleansing and all of the rules kind of matched what we needed it to actually do once they brought everything together. So more recently, I've always been very comfortable with the data as part of that, but now I'm in a spot where I do more presenting. And I'm, not just looking at dashboards, I'm coming up with, what new dashboards or new visualizations we're going to need for, looking at markets, researching markets, that sort of thing. So Tableau kind of entered, I like what's it called? Thank you. The quantified self movement, where you get all your data from your Fitbit, you have all your data from, I have a full body tracker now that I'm going to compare with a year's worth of data from Fitbit and just see how that all meshes together. Well, when I look at people's quantified self blogs, they'd have full visualization, and then they'd have it where you could download it and then see, Fitbit's got the same format, so I could plug mine in and play with it. And it was very accessible. So I've done me wanting data. I learned enough Python to scrape stuff, but of course that was, a year ago. Every time you go on the App Exchange, there's even new stuff that you can get Chrome extensions that do the scraping for you. It's very GUI, drag and drop. I'm that kind of drag and drop girl. So that not having to do a bunch of coding appeals to me. I'm just less interested in building GUIs. I want to use them and do fun things with them. So Tableau is very friendly with the drag and drop. I think probably most of y'all are pretty familiar with it. One of the things, taking Randy's class for this past time for data visualization, one of our products that we produced ended up being the infographic resume. And this isn't even a final copy, but one of the things is when I've been showing my business friends, they'll want to know, well, how do you do a word cloud? And they know how to do this and that, but how can they do this easily? And so part of it, and kind of my audience, I would say when I'm showing people, is really my peers. How do you take your resume, or how do you take data and make it into these things? And you can end up using it for other things. Obviously, this is just a very basic example. So that's where we get to our sort of attention deficit Tableau. We're busy. And, basically, just like data visualization, you get like 3 to 5 seconds for any given thing. So you have to, grab people quickly. And one of the things is, if you look at the big visualizations, that's not, you don't necessarily jump in and say, I can totally do that. I can do multivariable analysis and I'm going to get started. Start small. So if I start down with, let's do a word cloud, do a tree map, and then, as you start playing with it, add in additional variables, and then people can get comfortable with it. Because I think for any of you in IT, the more savvy your business users are, kind of the better better relationship you're going to have with them. So basically for Tableau, I won't run, I'll try to, I think we're running, okay. there's different versions. The main Tableau that I'm using is Tableau Public. We use Microstrategy within our business. So for all of my business data, Mr. Saenz over here is going to be showing Microstrategy. But for when I'm doing fun stuff, for public data sets, number one, if I'm actually using my own Fitbit data, you would definitely want to use a paid license just so you can kind of keep all of your, geocodes where you've been running probably off the web. So this is really covering Tableau Public, which is free. One of the things for some of the folks coming from a coding background, when you come from our business side of the background, sharing code, it doesn't really come naturally. I mean, you don't think about downloading somebody's stuff and reworking it necessarily. And one of the things Tableau makes it where, this is one of the infant mortality visualizations, and not only can you have all of this, but you can download the data set and you can download their workbook. So you can try to reproduce it. So it just gives you a framework to try to hit the ground running a little quicker. So I know now I'm familiar with GitHub, but I think when I started all of this, I didn't understand really the value of a shared repository, and I totally do now. I think, teaching the rest of the business how to do that, to share and make it reproducible, it will be handy for all of us. So basically, this is where I go to Tableau Public. The Explore Tableau Public is actually worth it. One of the cool things about Tableau is they have a really enthusiastic community, which I was really
enthusiastic.
Yeah. I was surprised that I was the one to jump in, because usually, they will trip over themselves to show you, because I've got friends that are Tableau enthusiasts, and it comes up at happy hour. They love it. And I understand. So crawl, walk, run. If you are like me, you will trip a lot, and I had another slide on this whole deck, and I overworked it a bit, and I deleted it. So basically, I started with just a really basic file. Since we've been having so many hurricanes, I was kind of wondering about flooding areas, so I went to FEMA's website. I love the fact that there's so many, the open data movement is so powerful. You can grab just all sorts of data, and it's there. Moving from data scarcity to data overabundance is kind of a new thing we are all facing. And the resources, again, y'all are probably familiar, but for me, having show me how to do chart types when I'm showing people and my peers, even our admin assistants, I've been showing some of this to, just because a lot of them are producing PowerPoint presentations, so the better they are at visualizing data, the better it is for our company. All right, so let's start simply. This is the data set I grabbed. It's FEMA grant. So what's the amount? It has, going back to at least 2008, I think, has all the grants that FEMA's done, and then like what category were they under. You can think of a few things recently. I was expecting hurricanes and maybe ice storms. So that's where I grabbed the file and connect to it. I can jump into the demo, but I didn't know if my computer would cooperate. Sometimes the Wi-Fi here. So I'll just jump into the demo.
It's questionable.
Yes. Uploading the data source, one of the things, y'all talk a little bit about data preparation and like dirty data going in. Tableau does a little bit of cleaning up before it, but there are, like Ultras and Informatica Rev are two free data preparation tools. So if you just tend to get some of the wild data that you'll get can need a little manipulation before you can really pull it into Tableau, or you can pull it into another analytics tool. So just check out those things. Be familiar, because there's going to be more products, I think, in the data preparation space without having to go to like an MDM and a Trillium or Dataflux, those kind of cleaning solutions. So,
what are the two tools you just mentioned?
Alteryx, and I don't know how to spell it off the top of my head.
Alteryx.
Yes. That's a little more codey, and Informatica Rev's more Excel drag and droppy. But they both have lines to it.
Formerly Springbook.
Formerly Springbook, yes. Yeah. So when we pulled this in, the FEMA file had like headers on the top, so it didn't get my column names nicely, but they had a little turn on your data interpreter, so that realized that the first thing was just a summary, so it gave us some proper field names. It's pretty quick. The free version's pretty good performance, but like I did a file with like 500,000 rows. That took a little longer to play with, but this was just a couple hundred rows, and that's what I tend to play with when I'm doing public data. I'm not doing terabytes of data. Maybe I'll get that ambitious someday. Once it's loaded, jump to the worksheets. And then I can go ahead and pull it up. I played with it a lot. I probably overworked it a bit too much. All right. I'm going to fit my screen to apologies. All right, so where we were on so this is the data screen, the data source screen. So we've got my years cleansed. I did have to do a little data prep on the file from FEMA. I had to put, it only had a 4-digit year. I had to put 11 before it because it was munging the year. That's okay. So once you get into Tableau, like I said, the first thing I wanted to start with is how to do a word cloud. Like Wordle is using the Silverlight, which we discovered. Like if you try to use it right now in Chrome, Wordle doesn't really work in Chrome anymore. So you have to go to Internet Explorer. I don't like anything that makes me go to Internet Explorer. My problem to solve is how else am I going to do it? And my friends who are programmers were Python. There's a package for that. There is. There always is. But this is a little more accessible. If I'm having one of my peers do a word cloud, I'm going to show them how to do it this way. Versus, let's get Python notebook on your computer and do it that way. So for doing a word cloud, real quick, this show me bar. So there's different visualizations that Tableau can do. They give you hints about which visualization is appropriate for what dimensions. Up here is the dimensions, so the grant name, incident type. Down here are your measures, and these are your numeric kind of fields. If you have like full addresses, you'll get geocodes down here. If it concomes the address to geocodes, which is handy when if you're wanting to do any of the maps. And I guess I could just use my mouse instead of walking and pointing. So if you have geographic dimensions, you can do kind of heat maps. And with this data, I've kind of played a little bit. That might have been one of the sheets I overworked, but that's okay.
That's smart enough. It's dimmed out the visuals that don't work with your data.
Yeah, so if you really want to do, this map, it'll tell you need a geo dimension so that you know to pull it over. So that's kind of helped. It's a little bit of hand holding, and I guess, it also means that I'm not calling somebody in IT to ask about it, which IT appreciates. So for this, I just color coded by the grant program. To do the sizes of the letters, I did the sum of the number of records, like how many incidents and how many grants are they giving for these different topics. I really thought it would be disaster mitigation would be a bigger thing, but public assistance, which again, they give grants for public assistance after disasters. But this is really basic word cloud because the data set didn't have very verbose fields, but it worked for what I was doing, and that was, finding different ways. Now, they don't have all of the fonts available that you'll have in Wordle, and if I was doing a bunch of words, I would exclude common English words, so I would use that from my own list. I'd probably grab it off Wikipedia to do and or the whatever to exclude those first. But I can do a pretty good approximation of a word cloud, which there was an email to see what part of the country were having problems with a certain topic. And I played with this just real quickly to spin up one so that I could have, the state. It was Tennessee. Tennessee was where that error was. So it was my way of conveying to my attention deficit coworkers real quickly. They got the high-level summary in 3 seconds, Tennessee. And then they could dig down at the bottom of the email for the data. So it's becoming, we're working it in a little bit more for regular communications, which is nothing but fun. Okay, tree map. When I showed my friends the infographic resume, they didn't know how to do a tree map. They were drawing squares, which is not good. So this was just showing, how much grant money goes towards hurricanes. Not incredibly surprising because Katrina, Rita, Andrew are covered in this. Then bubbles, again, I wanted to see, that would be Katrina. I don't remember that hurricane in Sandy. Okay. And then Mississippi, that was Katrina too. So, and then 2008, that was Hurricane Ike or Rita. Ike.
Rita was.
Yeah, Rita was 2005 also. It came a few months after Katrina, and I only know that because I was in downtown Houston with a big international group of data quality people who had only heard about hurricanes because of Katrina. Oh. So they were a little alarmed that there was one, heading towards Houston. Explained to them, we're 45 miles away from the coast, and we don't, we're above the floodplain, and we got bayous for good. So once you have kind of you will have multiple sheets to make up a dashboard or a story. For this, I think I made a dashboard, but it was really not complete. It was just putting these fun things. So for this, really I would be snapshotting it if this was the resume stuff, and that's what I would use to populate my infographic resume. Again, the audience is not going to have the advanced analytics, so yeah, it's pretty shameful following you gentlemen with your D3 and R presentations, but that's okay. You got to start somewhere, and so I'm very happy to start.
That was really fast.
What's that?
It's really fast.
It renders the graphics very quickly.
It does.
You can produce them.
Yeah.
That was the other thing, is there's some stuff definitely, like when I do the quantified self stuff, a lot of it I started out in Excel, and Excel would totally choke on it. Like 500,000 records, even if you're pulling enough dimensions in, you get that horrible screen and you don't know if it's saved or not, and it's not. So that was enough for me to see what are they doing this in and how is it not choking on 3 years of data. So Tableau is very fast. For business people and people who don't have a coding background, it's very accessible. And I'm a big fan of making data and making these kind of concepts accessible, because I think in 10 years from now, your regular standard business person, your marketing person, is going to have to be pretty fluid in data visualization. And there's also a reason this is kind of elementary level. For my kids and my friends' kids, we've already started approaching this so they can be comfortable with it. They're already learning like PowerPoint and stuff in schools. But this is really good to get a teenager or even an elementary student started so they can be comfortable with data, because you can guarantee by the time they're in the workforce, an elementary school person's going to be entering in the workforce in like 2020, this is going to be very standard for what they're doing. Just so the sooner they get comfortable with it and they get their sea legs, they will be shaming me in no time with what they can produce. So. All right. Any questions?
Can this hook up to Mongo?
MongoDB?
Yeah.
Like in the last month.
Oh, it can't?
Just announced, yeah.
Well, there's been an ODBC driver for quite a while. The MongoDB driver that's coming out is actually from MongoDB, and that's like Q4.
Okay.
But there's two different ODBC
But there is an
drivers.
ODBC connection that
There's two different ones you can use. Progress and DataStax both make ODBC.
I don't think those will work with the Tableau.
When's Microsoft going to buy them?
No, they won't. No, yeah, no. Anytime you need a driver, you have to have the desktop.
Yeah, so just for everybody's reference, Tableau Public is free. It's their, your free sample to get booked on Tableau. But you can only use static data sets.
Yeah.
CSVs, spreadsheets, and upload them, where their bread and butter is the desktop version, where you can link to APIs and data sources. And at their very high end, the server version, they want you to build an entire Tableau server as a backend.
So they do have OData. You can connect to OData with one of the other data sets I was playing with. I'm starting to see the government sites will put that on more often now. So that's been cool for refreshing and not having all the files locally. But that OData file was one of the 500,000 ones, and I knew for this kind of presentation that would not work. Like, watch it be still.
You want to mention really quickly, how do you get your visuals out of Tableau into PowerPoint or into publishing online or anything like that? How do you questions?
Well, I went and shut it. Basically,
just speak to it.
Speak to it. You can export it. I tend to. When you have it out on your site, you can share it, or you can tend to do it public. My stuff is not necessarily work-related. So any work-related stuff that's free to publish, I'll just publish that out. But you can export. Mainly, I've been downloading it as a Tableau workbook, and so download it that way. And then the data, obviously, is CSV. One of the practices that is always have linked to where your data is actually coming from, which I think somebody taught me.
But also, you can, it's either worksheet or analysis, you can make an image if you want to bake it down to an image.
And just have a PNG of it or something like that.
So, and if you're using online or server, it'll actually generate JavaScript call for you, so you can actually embed the live visualization. So
that's true.
I didn't even practice that. Because I'll get to where I want it, and I tend to grab it as with my Snagit tool for everything.
Just reach.
I know, it's
Works perfectly well.
Yep.
Yeah.
And if you're using Tableau Public, you can do the same thing. You can embed that live visualization back into anything.
Yeah.
Or you can use the story points in Tableau to use like its own presentation method.
So it generates JavaScript then? We can worry about the JavaScript and put it on in anything then?
The online or the server will.
So this is an advantage of Tableau. You can set the state exactly how you like it, and then have a new story point. So guide someone through a visualization and know it's going to look that way for that.
Yeah, Tableau is very strong on stories. So you could even have multiple versions of it that show different views of the data, and it's the same data, but you're walking somebody through to a conclusion. They're very big on that. Yep, Rob, you want to?
You have the HDMI to the...
Yeah, I think. Here it is. Yeah.
I did it.
Put that in first, right?
More cookies, more drinks. We gotta use them up.
I actually used it for something. I was,
You ready?
Yeah, we're ready.
It's all yours.
You want the other one?
Hello, I'm Saenz. Today, my dad, Rob Saenz, will be showing you some stuff about Microstrategy.
Hi, how are you all? Thank you. So, I work with Haley. I used to work with Scott, just to kind of clear that out. These are my people. So yeah, I'm going to be showing you MicroStrategy. How many of you are familiar with it at all? You use it at the office? So maybe you've seen some of that, the kind of governed data dimensions and all the business speak that they talk about. And it's great. It's great for what it does. We use it every day. And then Haley showed us some of the public stuff. I'm going to show you a pretty private story that their new version just came out. So she kind of threw me off because she said she was going to do a quantified self thing. So I thought, what could I do? Y'all know what this is? Anybody recognize that one?
A voice recorder?
It's not a watch. It is the Contour USB Next glucose monitor. So this guy has this nice little feature that kind of opens up the world for me. I'm insulin dependent, and so is Aiden. He's had it since he was 10 months. I've had it since I was 8 years old. Don't know why. It's not supposed to be genetic, but whatever. So that guy spits out a data file that looks a little something like this. Maybe. Let's go.
It's going.
There it goes. Still coming.
It's Excel, just wait.
Yep. And I have an app on my Mac that the problem with these things is they're so scared about you modifying, touching the data, that they're so proprietary. So I have an app that I got on the App Store that actually lets me take it in and then visualize it in very annoying and limited ways, and then export to CSV. So that's what I did. Yes. I spit it out to CSV, and I was going to show you. So Microstrategy just released a new version 10, was it last week? And as a part of that, in addition to the server version, they have this analytics desktop version that kind of behaves, taking a lot of cues from Tableau over the years. So what you can actually do is you can connect to a database. I love this, actually. This is one of my favorites. When you look at the data sources that they offer, so they offer, from a file, from a URL, from a database, Hadoop, Salesforce, Google Analytics. My favorite one, I think, is from a BI perspective, is this one right here.
Others.
Other BI tools. So if you want to suck out business objects or OBIE and just start visualizing it, you can. So that's pretty cool, aggressive. Twitter and Facebook, and I played with those. Those are really cool. Today, I'm going to pull in this data, and I started to kind of wrangle it. It started taking. There's a really cool new facility that they have where you can take kind of this ungoverned. I don't know if I'll do that. It's a Mac app, but it's there. You can tell they're kind of baby stepping. This is the first time they've ever been out on Mac. So I'll take this guy, and it has some really cool. Haley mentioned data wrangling. You can take several tabs. If you have an Excel sheet, it'll do several tabs, and then you just kind of prepare the data. So you can do lots of Excel functions to it once you get it in there. You can hit this button right here and kind of wrangle your data. So for instance, if you wanted to, I started to play with this one. It started taking me too long, so I didn't end up doing it. But you can take a column and you can say, you know what, I actually don't want the time in there. So you can come in there and say, let me just extract by a fixed length. I think it's 14 from 0. Yep, programming to 14. Apply, and it'll just give you just the date. I guess 13 is what I should have picked. So that's some really cool stuff. And then once you start putting these in there, you can actually, it generates a history script. You can actually take this guy, save it, and use it again on the same data set, which is really cool, really powerful. In the interest of time, I'm going to go ahead and pull out the wrangled data set and import that one and show you what that looks like. So I'll put this guy here.
You can get crazy in that too. It'll be regular expression data.
It's amazing.
Super complicated.
If you're into that sort of
It was
If
not.
you're into that.
Yeah, and that was not on the previous version. This is really cool. So we'll get the file from disk. Take the wrangled version. It's already in Excel. Contemplate buying a larger screen Mac. Here data. And I really could hit finish, but just to show you. So the way Microstrategy works is it says you've got attributes or dimensions to say these are the things I want to count by, and then you've got metrics or measures, kind of like Tableau, that says these are the things I want to add, average, multiply, do funny math on. So you can see I already broke the date and time. You can actually, once you've got it in here, if I want to rename this, which I do, I'm going to rename it to BG for blood glucose, and I'll just hit finish. So now what it does is it creates an in-memory object that can then be visualized. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to filter out, I have some other values, like this thing lets me, when I check my blood sugar, it lets me specify if I'm injecting any insulin, if I'm taking any carbs, but it's real kind of a pain to do data entry in this thing, so there's nothing really useful in there. So I'll just go ahead and pull out the types that aren't, say glucose only. And then I can come and create this visualization. So what might be an interesting thing to measure is what does it look like over a day? I pulled in 3 months. Kind of the way that we target as diabetics is what is your 3-month average? They call it, they do this index and it comes what they call a hemoglobin A1C. And if you're not diabetic, your A1C is around 5. Ours tend to be more in the 7s, 8s, higher. They're much more comfortable if it's like around 6.5 or 7. Real quick segue over to Interstate real fast, just to kind of make this interesting point and make fun of myself. So Interstate's been around for 65 years. Started out as a small company out of the back of our founder's pickup truck, and it's grown to the top replacement battery brand. We sell 17 million car lawnmower batteries, 18 million or 19, we want to keep going if you want. But it started out with just relationships, right? And so we were a company that was doing as well as how well we knew handshakes and deals and a consignment model that trusted people. But when you've got that many batteries and 200,000 dealers and you're in the United States and internationally, you really need to start making decisions based on data instead of going like this and going, you know, I think we're doing okay. And I think that's what the really powerful thing about data is, that I can take this thing and I could say, you know, based on what I'm remembering, I think I'm probably doing okay. But until you really import it and look at the data, you go, oh, that's not exactly what in my mind I was thinking. So even somebody who knows data is power and tells you the real story, it's kind of eye-opening. So let me take that data set and let's say, so an average thing, a thing I might want to see is by day, what is my blood sugar doing? Now if I take this blood sugar and drop it in here under metrics, these are ridiculously high numbers because it's aggregating on day. So what I actually want to do is turn that into an average. So I'll just come over here, I'll say calculation, what was it? Create metric. Man, I can't read this. So, there's a one-click button. Average. Calculate average. Makes more sense. That number right there is not super, that's not the right precision, so let's go ahead and change that real fast. We'll make that fixed. And we'll reduce the precision and that. Let's just keep it right there. Okay. So now we're dealing in numbers that are more manageable. Now, kind of like taking another page out of Tableau, they've kind of got the show me feature expressed a different way. So I'm looking at it as a grid, but maybe it makes sense to take a look at it as a line graph. And so then you can kind of see, all right, over time, this is what it's doing on an average basis, right? Now, this is really cool. I love this. If I want to know, if I want to show this to somebody who doesn't know where a diabetic needs to be, the doctor may say, you know what, your average needs to be to avoid running too low. Average for a normal person is 80 to 120. Usually to avoid hypoglycemia, they'll set our range a little bit higher. So let's say we'll set it to about 100 to 150. You can actually add these reference lines as a constant. So we'll put this guy at 100. And we'll put, I don't think I did that right. Did I say it was 0?
You did. It's down, it's down at the bottom.
Yeah. Remove reference line. Okay. Reference line at 100. I guess I just can't see it. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, your y-axis is starting at 100.
Ah, that's pretty fun to fix in a second. And then if I start my, I'll set another one at 150.
Looks like we got the high score.
So yeah, not really the score that you want to go for, but it is what it is. Get out of this. Now, since this is a diabetic visualization, I'm thinking we probably don't need a blue line. Let's go ahead and change that to a red one. It's all about the blood, right? Yes. And you've got lots of formatting options if you want to change the font. They bundle in a bunch. And then the thing that's cool is I can go ahead and I can add, come back to my visualization, I can add a trend line, and it'll kind of show me like where I am. And then it can, if you say, you know what, but I really want it to be a little bit flatter, you've got different algorithms that you can use. Let's see, actually I want to format it, I want to change it. So right now it's set as best fit. I can change it to be linear. I'll show you in a second. The other thing that may be useful is to just say, you know, it's really not a relationship from day to day. So you could switch it up, and then you can kind of see, okay, so there's the trend, but these are where the actual averages are falling.
Awesome.
So yeah, here it is. If I change the model up here, I can change it to linear, and then you can kind of see where I am in relation to those. And I believe up here, if I want to, just in the interest of not, you can take this guy and you can create a different visualization. You can just duplicate him. And right now, this one is by day. If we want to see it by time, which I think is another thing, this is instructive right here. I can just swap this attribute here for time. And then you can kind of see that through the day, we're kind of headed up. Or if you wanted to say, this one's a lot less useful, but if you wanted to say, this one you probably do want to do with the line, so let's change the shape here. This is actually a really cool feature too. If you want to just look at a particular section, I didn't say that. Here, let me show you on this one. This one I got a little further on. On the 2.0, the other thing that is cool is it saves them as Microstrategy.mstr files that you can then share those with anybody who has the application. You can also put them up into their enterprise solution, and then you can share that. One of the things I love about it from an IT standpoint is that I can give this to people like Haley, let her build her visualizations with Excel or JSON or whatever it is that she has, and then we have an architecture team that kind of says, you know what, we need to kind of pre-coordinate all those data sets, bring them in with proper ETL. I can actually come here and say, replace this data set with that data set, and it'll just quickly update, which is something we didn't have the facility to do before. So here I did it by day, and here I have it by time. And here I went ahead and threw it in by period, so you can see kind of if I tag it in the monitor with what it is, you can kind of see where am I running low, where am I running high, just by the basic kind of tagging of what happens at the time. And there's all kinds of different things that you can do to kind of get a look at what's going on. That is some of the power of the new tool if y'all are interested in learning more about it. Yeah.
So it's an enterprise pay-to-play, is that correct? There's no public version of it?
There was a public version of it. It seems like what they're going to do now is they're going to sell a standalone client that you can do things with, and then it's probably priced around, I think they're saying around, they haven't actually announced a retail price on it. You can go and download a 30-day trial. They're going to announce what that price is, I don't know. We're going to be going to an event at the end of July, and if you go to the event, like if you can get your company to pay for it, they're already announcing. If you go, you'll get a free copy of the client. They've never sold it before. They may back down at the last minute and then just go, and here's, you can have it. Because it's a really powerful tool. I can understand why they would want to sell it, but they haven't done it before, so who knows what they'll do. Yeah. What other questions do you guys have?
About the data, there's a downward trend. Did you change something?
Let's see.
Are you eating differently, or?
Is this downward trend right here?
Yeah, it's slight, but over time, if we're going forward in time, like March.
Yeah. So there's so much data. One of the things that if I had more time I would do is like I could take my fitness tracker data and throw that in there, and you can see what does the average blood sugar do on a day when you're more active. Or quite honestly, this doesn't represent a really good trend of what my blood sugars are actually doing, because it's all dependent on how good of a boy I am at just checking, right? So if I could take, if I was going to create another sheet, I could do it like on a day, and I could count how many BGs I actually had in a given day. So you could come in here and just create a metric and say, count the BG and say
blood glucose.
Blood glucose, yeah. I think I can just take it, aggregate. Yeah, aggregate by count.
Nice.
And then you can just throw that guy on there and just see, well, how many. So some of these where it's supposed to be at least 3, and they like me to check 6 or 7. So you can kind of see if you were to do this guy, just what's happening, how often is checking actually occurring.
Got it.
Yeah. So there's all kinds. I always say that diabetes is the data disease where you can really dig in, and there hasn't really become a player that's kind of made it stupid simple for people to just take data and manage it. I've actually kind of been thinking about that from time to time, is like how to make that easier for people, especially
They're starting to do trackers that will do the blood glucose detection, but since it's a life or death thing, they're afraid to really release it because if it's misreading.
Yeah, there's a lot of tech. They're starting to do these what they call open loop diabetes pumps. So it will continue to check you subcutaneously. There's a sensor that they put under the skin. You have to calibrate it with actual blood sugar sticks. They're starting to get more accurate, and then based on what it's doing from a trending standpoint in real time, it will administer insulin. And some of them will even administer glucagon, which is the hormone that actually causes your blood sugar to rise. That makes me a little more nervous. Just hormone. You could effectively go through a whole day without eating, and I don't know if that sounds like a good idea.
Fascinating.
Can you do any kind of seasonality charts and seasonality analysis in that?
Oh, I think absolutely. So the other thing that you've got, like if you wanted to take a day, I think you can actually, if you were looking at a larger data set, you can create, so if I wanted to take a month, if I want to say a month of day, kind of create an attribute on the fly. I don't think they've got the code right, but then you could start to create months out of those, and then you can create quarters, you can create years, and then you can kind of start to pattern those things about what's happening. You bet November, December are going to be higher when there's family and there's food everywhere, right? And there's less activity in your life.
In this case, I'd be real interested to look at weekend versus not weekend.
That's actually a good idea too. Yeah, that's great. That's just scratching the surface. Yeah. Anybody else? So that's it. Not on public. Thank you so much.
All right, we'll close it up there. Thank you, Robert. Please leave comments, reviews on the meetup group. That helps. If you guys took any photos, tweet about the group, share it. Also, if you just want to give me feedback, this was a total experiment to let these guys do it. They did a great job. And we can, there are hundreds